Welcome to Vision Pros, the show all about spatial computing, visionOS, and getting work done on the Apple Vision Pro. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Vision Pros. I'm thrilled to be joined by Jeff Richardson from iPhoneJD.com. Jeff is an attorney out in New Orleans, and Jeff was on my other podcast, iPad Pros, back in August of 2024 for episode 203. And in that episode, you can hear how he uses the iPad to get all his work done as an attorney. And Jeff was the day one purchaser of the Apple Vision Pro. He's had some time now with the headset, and he's fallen in love with it. This episode, we kind of dive into, over the past year since he's had the headset, how he's incorporated into his job as an attorney. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so over at visionpros.fm/Patreon. And by supporting this podcast, you'll get early access to both Vision Pros and iPad Pros. My great thanks to everyone that supports the show. You can also review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. That is greatly appreciated and sends the right signals to Apple to show this podcast more in search, helping others discover the show. With that, here's my interview with Jeff. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely. So we chatted probably about a year ago about your use of iPads in the law practice, and you got a Vision Pro pretty shortly after that, I'd say, but we wanted to wait a bit until you kind of put it more into your actual workplace and seeing how it kind of panned out for you as an attorney. Is that the right word for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lawyer, attorney, same thing. As we talked about when I was on your podcast last, I'm an attorney. I'm in New Orleans, and mostly appellate law, but lots of different type of law that I do. But a lot of people in the sort of tech sphere know me because for over 16 years now, I've been publishing a website called iPhone JD, where I talk about, primarily how attorneys can use the iPhone and the iPad and related technology like the Vision Pro in their law practice. Although I know that there's lots of professionals who are not attorneys that read the website too, because I often talk about, how do you get work done with the Apple technology. So I was one of the people who lined up on day one to get my Vision Pro. And so I've literally had it from day one. So that's been about a year plus now. I've been using it and absolutely love it.
That's great. Yeah. So you got it day one for Vision Pro. Is that right? Yep.
Day one. I was there in the morning getting it. Yep.
And how have you gone on along with it? Like, are you doing the Belkin Headstrap thing as well now? And like, what kind of adjustments have you made over the past year to make it even more enjoyable to use, I guess?
Sure. So there's been quite a few accessories that I have been playing with. When I first got the Vision Pro, of course, I thought I would need to have a case to sort of carrying it around. And of course, the only option at the time was Apple's travel case. So I bought it for, what was it, $200 or whatever. And I did use it. I did use it when I traveled. It's big, bulky, and everybody refers to it as looking like something that a NASA
You're going to the moon,
might use.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it did the job. But as soon as the Belkin travel bag became available, which I believe was at the end of 2024, if I remember correctly, I got one. And in fact, I have it right next to me, and I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. It is so much more compact, which makes such a huge difference just for carrying it around. It carries everything that I would want in it, all the key things. I guess the only thing that I don't put in there that I sometimes like to have when I travel is an external keyboard. We'll get that in a second. But otherwise, everything that I want can go in there. It's nice that there's even a little spot for the an AirTags in case you lose it or something like that. You could track it. It's always been very curious to me that Apple's perhaps most expensive product doesn't have Find My capabilities built into it. That was odd, but I guess they had their reasons for doing that. But I love that travel bag. So I use it just to, as a place to store things. But, just for example, about a week and a half ago, I went up to Chicago for a big convention for attorneys. The American Bar Association has their annual tech show conference where I spoke about a number of topics, including the iPad and the Vision Pro. And it was just great to have it, not only because it's a small case for carrying things around, but when I was traveling, I try not to check luggage. So I had my my suitcase on wheels, and then my second bag, which was just a knapsack. And the Belkin case is small enough that I could throw some other stuff in the knapsack, like my iPad and the bag that I used, all that sort of stuff. And I can also throw the Belkin case inside of the knapsack too, and it was all small enough to be my my thing that I board the plane with. I've done it that way a couple of times now, and it works great. So anyway, I could talk forever about a silly little travel bag, but I mean, it's the bag that Apple should have made.
Yeah, I know when I travel, I just have a big duffel bag, and like a quarter of my space is dedicated to the Vision Pro and the Apple travel case begin that. It's like, it's kind of a lot of space for,
It is. But before we're talking about another accessory, since we're talking about the travel bag, I mean, we might just mention that, of course, it's nice. It was nice for me to take it to Chicago because I was actually using it there in the presentation. But I will just mention that when you were flying on a plane and you have a Vision Pro, yeah, you look a little geeky when you put it on. But I think the flight attendants are used to it now. And oh my goodness, it is so wonderful to watch a show. It's so easy to forget what cramped space you have on a plane when you're watching the huge screen of a Vision Pro's virtual screen. And so I love to load it up with, TV episodes or something like that to watch while I'm traveling. And that is just amazing. The time goes by. And it's nice that, I haven't really done immersive video on a plane. I guess I could, but when you're watching a movie, you have that huge screen and yet you can still see your surroundings enough so that it's easy to see when the flight attendant is coming by, just so that you can, talk to them and let them know what's going on and stuff like that. I remember I wore one on a plane maybe a week or two after the Vision Pro first came out, just because I happened to have a trip to New York scheduled. And the flight attendants were definitely coming up to me saying, "Oh, what is this?" Because I'm sure they see all the latest tech on planes, and they're like, "Oh, this is interesting." And then last week, I mean, nobody paid any attention to me. They totally understood that they could talk to me while I was wearing the Vision Pro, and that I could talk back to them. I mean, they had no problem understanding that. So I thought that was funny. A year later, how different it was treated.
Yeah,
so,
I've had one experience wearing it on the plane, and amazing. Yeah, it's just and it was fairly early on, and the flight attendants were pretty good about it,
Yeah.
But it is such it lets you escape from the plane a bit, which is nice.
It is fabulous. The time just flies by, and it doesn't really matter how long you're on there. I can imagine that for a cross-country trip or certainly even an international trip, it would be really wonderful to have that.
You load up Snakes on a Plane, Air Force One, you got a good old time.
Exactly. Of course, the one thing you can't do, at least for me, is, eating and drinking is difficult. You can sort of snack a little bit, perhaps, but you certainly
straw is okay.
A straw would be key.
But you don't want a bump would be bad with the open. Because I'll have a big cup of water that I'll use at home where I don't have to worry about bumps, but I'd be concerned about that.
There you go. So I'll have avoided that. But other accessories that you mentioned, the Belkin head strap. So I feel like I'm lucky because I'm one of the people that from the beginning, I really haven't had a problem with the Vision Pro feeling, awkward on my head or uncomfortable or something. I always use the, I guess it's what called the solo loop. Is that the name of it? Which I found very comfortable. When I first got the Vision Pro, the other one that comes with the straps, I mean, I used it for 5 minutes and I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's not nearly as comfortable as the loop. So I use the loop all the time and I was fine with it. But then when some of these, I was definitely cognizant of the fact that when Apple demonstrated some of these things way back when, they did have a loop across the top. So I was curious what that would do. And I would listen to people on your podcast and elsewhere talk about the solo top thing that you could get on Etsy to have sort of 2 of them and stuff like that. And I'm like, that just seems like a lot of expense. But when Belkin came out with their strap, because it wasn't very expensive, I'm like, okay, let me get the Belkin head strap and see what I think. And I like it. I mean, it would be fine without it, but it gives a little more support to have it on there. And so I literally put it on there when I first got it, again, around the end of last year. And I haven't taken it off since. I've been very, very happy with it. So I don't think it's essential for me. Maybe I'm just lucky with the shape of my head or whatever. But I have no problem with it. One other that I'll mention, though, that's sort of the same genre. Before I had purchased the Belkin one, there's a company called Annapro, Annapro, I think. And they make a strap that's a little different because it's sort of a hard plastic as opposed to the Belkin strap, which is soft. And one of the, in terms of comfort, when I tried the Annapro, it was okay, but it ultimately wasn't something I wanted to wear. Again, I didn't really need it, and there was a little bit of awkwardness with it on there, so I ultimately took it out. But there is one thing that I did like about it, which was the fact that because it's hard plastic, you can actually wear it without having the I forget the name of it, the vision shield or whatever that goes around your eyes.
Yeah.
You can just remove those magnetic pieces completely and just wear it. And that's actually intriguing. First of all, when you're working, it means that you can see even more. Your peripheral vision is even greater. So you can see even more of the world around you, which is actually sometimes sort of nice when you're getting work done, but we don't want to be completely removed from friends, family, colleagues, whatever. You still look like a dork to them, but at least you can see them a little bit better.
Probably more
So
so
that was one
actually
thing.
with the Anna Pro, I'd
Yeah,
probably say. Yeah.
maybe even more so. But the thing that I actually think is interesting about that product is I consider it sort of a preview for the future. And I say that because we all know that this first generation is the biggest and the heaviest that it's going to ever be, right? I mean, over time, we eventually want to get to the point where it's the same size as the Meta Orion, prototype glasses that was in the news a couple of months ago, where it basically just looks like a regular pair of glasses. That would be the holy grail for most purposes. Of course,
For
it wouldn't give
AR
you the
stuff. For movies, for movies and stuff, I'd still want an
for AR,
immersive
exactly. It wouldn't give you the
glass.
immersive,
Yeah.
right. Exactly. And that's going to be an interesting, when we get to the point where the technology can be small enough to be the size of a pair of glasses, it'll be interesting for Apple and its competitors to decide, do they become two products, or do you sell glasses that have some shield that turns them into the VR product? I don't know. But anyway, the Anna Pro is interesting because it gives you a little preview of course, they're big. When you take the shields off, it's still bigger than a pair of glasses would be. But as someone who's worn my glasses my entire life, when you use the Anna Pro, it does sort of remind you this is what it would be like to just have this computer technology in the glasses. So for anyone listening, if you work like I do, sort of when you're out and about and use it in an AR way, and you like the idea of being a little more open to the world around you, so you can see more of what's going on. It's not a bad product for that, and I do recommend it for that. However, if you're just looking for something to support the weight a little bit better, I really think that the Belkin head strap, which wasn't even around when the Anna Pro product first came out, but I think, for me at least, I think that's the one to get. Now, I know that there's also some medical companies that make even more sophisticated
Yeah.
ones that I haven't tried, but
Yeah, I got the Solo Top, and then I got the Belkin one a couple weeks ago for $38 because you can get it cheaper on Belkin's website from Apple stores.
that's
which
a great
is
price. Yeah.
so interesting. And wow, is it much better than the very expensive Solo Top solution? Now I have this extra, small size Solo band that I don't know what to do with. Like, who's going to want to buy that thing? Or
So now that you've got multiple, which one, first of all, do you use one all the time? And if
all
so,
the
which one do
time,
you
all the
use?
time. And the Belkin one I think is better because
Yeah.
it's firm, right? The Solo Top, it's using that more loosey goosey back material, the
Right.
knitted
Right.
band. So the firm material of the Belkin, I think, is a better, it sits better in your head, I think, and it's much cheaper. So that's also a plus. So very
Yeah,
happy with
and
the
it looks good
Belkin.
too.
Yeah,
It's a good, of course, Belkin. This is what they do, and I know the rumors are they may have worked with Apple on this, but it really looks like it belongs there. Again, not that looks
yeah.
is the biggest thing, because when you're wearing it, you can't see it, but it just there's something very comfortable about using that product. So
No,
I
yeah,
really
no,
like
it's
it.
great. And yeah, I wish that was out when the Solo Top was the best solution, which it was, I think,
Yeah.
at one time.
So I'll talk about a couple more accessories that I really like. A more obvious one, of course, is a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, for getting, obviously, if you're going to watch it for using it for entertainment purposes, you don't need it. But whenever I get work done, and we'll circle around later and talk about what I do for getting work done, but just having a keyboard is so key. I use just the simple old Apple Magic Keyboard, not the Magic Keyboard for iPad, but the one that's been around forever that used to come with like an iMac when you bought it, just the regular keyboard that doesn't have the number pad or anything like that. I think I've got 5 of those on my house because every time I got a new computer, I get another keyboard with it. And it's a great Bluetooth keyboard that works really well. It's compact. I can throw it in my bag. I use it with my iPad all the time, but I also use it with the Vision Pro whenever I want to get some real typing done, and that's really nice.
Do you
But
have a
obviously,
laptop as well?
so my laptop situation is interesting. In my office, my law firm, when I first started my law firm in the 1990s, we were one of the very few big law firms in the country that were Macs, which was fun. And I liked it because I prefer Apple products. But in the early 2000s, we switched over to PCs because that's where the legal market was going. And so for a very long time now, we've just been using PCs. And as I'm talking to you, I'm in my office right now. I'm looking at my Dell computer, which just sort of sits there next to me, and it's got the tops folded on it, and I have it connected to an external monitor and an external keyboard. And I never really take that laptop anywhere. I always joke that if somebody had told me that they glued that Dell laptop to the table, 6 months ago, I would never know because I never really pick it up. When I'm out and about and traveling, I really exclusively use my iPad. Because at home, I use a Mac Mini. I used to be an iMac user for many, many years. And then when Apple stopped making the big 27-inch iMac, I switched over, like many others, to a Mac Mini with an Apple Studio display. So it's basically the same screen. And I love that setup. It's great for my home computer, but it means that if I'm traveling for work, traveling for a conference, or even just like in a coffee shop getting work done, I don't really have a Mac laptop that I don't own a Mac laptop at all. And although I have a PC laptop, it's not really something that I prefer to use if I don't have to. So I just use an iPad.
Okay.
And
Have you been
and I really like that.
tempted to get a
Go ahead.
cheap MacBook Air, like an M1, just for the Vision Pro as like that combo's pretty nice.
Very much. I've absolutely thought about that. In fact, originally, I was thinking about getting a cheap Mac Mini to use with it, with the display mode and stuff like that. I've toyed with this many times, because the thing is, when I use an iPad with the Vision Pro, which I'll sometimes use if I'm like, working in a coffee shop or something like that, I want to have the experience that you can have with a Mac laptop, thanks to the recent addition of the Mac Virtual Display Mode, which works so well because, as you know, and anyone that used it know, your display turns black, and it's just your virtual display, so you have privacy, which as an attorney is really nice. I mean, I would love knowing nobody can look over my shoulder and potentially see anything that's attorney-client privileged confidential information. When I use my Vision Pro with my iPad, you instead use the mode where you're simply just doing an AirPlay receiver mode. So you're mirroring your screen. And I will dim my iPad screen so that it's as dark as possible, which makes it really hard for anyone to see it. And then in my Vision Pro, I will, I make the screen super, super big, and then I can use it that way. And I'm using my keyboard, and that works fine. And I'm using my trackpad, which I'm going to talk about in a second, which works fine. And so that's the setup I use. I wish that Apple, I suspect that I'm in a minority, but I wish that Apple would recognize that the great work they've done on the Mac Virtual Display would be just as useful for the iPad. And for people like me that use an iPad when they're out and about, I wish they could completely replicate it, and that would be my preference. But we're not there
especially when a
today.
keyboard and trackpad are attached.
Exactly. And so many people have a keyboard and a trackpad because they use the Apple Magic Keyboard for iPad that's got that stuff built in. I don't own one of those. I'm fine with just having a regular keyboard, and I carry around a trackpad. But that would be really nice. And so that's the next accessory I want to talk about is the trackpad. I love using the Apple trackpad with the Vision Pro. And I say that because the Vision Pro does a great job of you look and you pinch. We all know how that works, and that
But
does
text
work well.
selection is kind of rough with eye tracking.
Absolutely.
You can do it, but it's kind of rough, yeah.
And so if I'm going to be getting work done where you want to be more precise with text selection, and also if I'm running an iPad app on the Vision Pro, so it's made for the iPad screen, which is more touch sensitive, and the objects that you need to tap are smaller, you can just be so much more precise with a trackpad. Additionally, I don't have the best eyesight in the world. I mean, it's fine, but my right eye is much stronger than my left eye, and I have a condition called astigmatism that my eyes will shake. I don't really notice it, but sometimes people can see it if they look at my eyes. And so, and it tends to be sort of at the end of the day when I'm sort of tired. Ironically, the same time of day, I'm most likely to be watching like, an Apple TV Plus show or something like that before I go to bed at night. And so there's a mode on the Vision Pro that you can go to. I think it's in the accessibility settings where you can actually have a little dot appear of where the Vision Pro thinks you're looking. And sometimes I'll turn that mode on and I see the dot dancing all over the place. I don't feel like my eyes are moving, but I know that they physically are. And the Vision Pro is seeing it and is having difficulty seeing exactly where I want to look. It's fine if the objects are big, but for more
Have
precise
you
objects, it's tough.
tried turning on only the left or right eye? Does that help at all?
Yep, I I absolutely use that mode, and I turn the right eye. That I've had that mode turned on for a long time. But even when it just focuses on my right eye, because both of my eyes, just happen to
Mm-hmm.
shake. It's just a medical condition I have. Which would, again, I don't mean to exaggerate. It's a totally minor condition, but for something as precise as the Vision Pro, it totally
Mm-hmm.
notices it.
Sure.
And so when I use a trackpad, it just completely solves that problem. I can be as precise as I want to be and use the trackpad. And so, sometimes even if I'm just, watching movies or just informally looking at the internet, Safari or photos, I might just be sitting on my couch, but I'll still, and I don't have a keyboard, but I'll still take that trackpad and just put it right next to me on the couch. And that way you can use both. I mean, that's the nice thing about it. I can look and I can pinch, and that's all great. But if I ever want to be more precise, I just put my hand right there on the trackpad, and it works really well. So I'm a huge fan of the trackpad for all sorts of uses, but it's especially useful for me.
I kind of wonder. I was just thinking about this. If so, Apple supports game controllers of all sorts, including Switch Joy-Cons. I kind of wonder if mouse mode in the Switch 2 will be supported in Apple devices going forward
Yeah,
at some point. Because that'd be an
yeah.
interesting
I
actually
mean,
input to have a little tiny Joy-Con that's also a mouse for the Vision Pro for occasional
yeah, I've
uses.
been watching those rumors, and at one point the rumors were strong enough that it made you think it was actually about to come out, but it's obviously not there yet as of the time that we're
June.
recording.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
soon.
maybe it'll come out this summer in WWDC, but
What do you
that'll be
mean, WWDC?
what. Well, in other
For
words, Apple hasn't formally said when it's going to support, if it's going to support, or when it's going to support mouse device, third-party game controllers, unless you've seen something I haven't
No, it
seen.
does. It's done that
Uh,
for a while now. Like you can hook up a DualSense to the Vision Pro. There's even a really great remote play app for PS5 on
oh,
there. And
now
you
that you
can
say it,
even
Tim, I
control
forgot
the
that is actually
UI.
out.
Yeah, it's out.
Yeah.
It's
So have
probably
you been
last
playing with
OS
that?
a ton. I love it. It's revelatory. Like it's one of the best places to play. Um,
I'm not a big gamer, so I guess I heard the rumors that it was coming out, and then I'd forgotten that it
yeah,
actually came
and
out.
it's kind of
So
funny. Outside the game, you can actually use the DualSense. If you look at a window, you can like use the joystick to like scroll up and down, which is kind of interesting.
that is sort of
Yeah,
interesting. Huh. Is there anything that makes you think it's a better control? Do you use a trackpad with your Vision Pro at all?
occasionally. Most of the time, it's the headless MacBook Air that I'll hook up to it.
Yeah. Although then I guess you're just using the trackpad on your headless MacBook Air for it. Is there anything about the game controller that you think is a better input device than a trackpad?
Not really. I mean, if you're scrolling, it's kind of a nice novelty.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's for games.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a big one for games. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll mention one last accessory that I totally, totally love. And this is something that came out, I guess, relatively recently from Anker. And it's a product. I mean, I'll name the specific product, but it's actually more of a category or product that's great. The one that I have is called the Anker Laptop Power Bank. And it's this huge, heavy thing that costs about $100 on, Amazon or elsewhere. And it's a nice device because you got one right there. So you
Yeah.
know what I'm
Is this
talking
it?
about.
Yep.
That's the one, exactly. And so, and first of all, I love the display on it. It gives you a little smile, but more importantly, it'll tell you how much battery power you have left. And as you recharge it, you can actually see how long it's going to take to get back to 100, which is so nice if
Yeah.
you know you're about to go somewhere.
Yeah, and I have the little dock that it sits on top, which will
Okay.
charge it at insane speeds. It charges it faster than any charger I've ever hooked it up to over a wire. Inductively, that dock charges it like this huge battery within like an hour. It's like fully charged. It's wild.
So you have a slightly different model than I do, although they look very similar. The
Yeah,
one that I
mine's
purchased,
probably a bit bigger. I don't know. Mine was more expensive, so it's probably a bigger milliamp. Let's see if it says it on here. But the cool thing is like, so when I've occasionally killed the Vision Pro completely dead, and you'll notice like it jumped from like, oh, it's charging the battery at like just 5 watts or 6, and then that jumps up to like 30 and 40. It's like, oh, it's actually doing what it needs to now. The Vision Pro is
yeah,
like
yeah,
not
yeah.
as dead as it once was. But yeah, that seeing how much juice it's giving it is very just interesting, and how
It's
much,
really nice.
yeah,
You
how
can see
much.
how much is going in, how much is going
Mm-hmm.
out.
I love it. Yeah.
The one that I purchased is about 25,000 milliamps, which is a ton. And the reason I think that you might have slightly different models is mine does not support a charging base. It's just a standalone unit.
Okay.
But I know that Anker also has the category of chargers that, like you say, do support the charging base, which
Yeah, so
is
yours
actually,
does
so I don't
not
have
have the 3 dots.
I do not have that in the bottom.
Okay.
It's just sort of a rubberized bottom, which is actually nice because it makes it sound very, but regardless, I love that. I love it for those reasons. And the one that I have, and maybe yours too, it actually has 2 built-in USB-C cords, which is awesome. The one that comes on the top that sort of pulls out, and then the lanyard on the side that you can sort of carry it around, or you can unplug it. But it's great for me for a Vision Pro accessory because, you know, we all know the Vision Pro battery lasts about 2 hours, maybe a little bit more. Great for watching a movie. But if I'm going to actually get real work done, I mean, I could work many, many hours with the Vision Pro. And so I just, sit down the battery pack and then plug it into the Anker device. In fact, that Anker device is nice enough that if, for example, I'm using my iPad as well, although I use the iPad Pro M4 model that goes for a long time on power, but I got power, why not plug it in as well?
Sure.
So I plug both of them in, and then everything is fully powered and getting all the charge it needs. And I can just go, I mean, I say essentially forever. I know that there is obviously a true limit on a 25,000 milliamp battery, but as far as I'm concerned, it will charge my Vision Pro until it's time to go to bed at night.
It's pretty long. I've gone probably 6 hours in one go between the headset and that all combined. Yeah, it is
fantastic. So, whether I'm actually getting work done or if I'm just going to be watching movies for a long time at night, I have the Vision Pro with the external battery that it comes with, and I plug it into that Anker battery, and then I just don't even have to worry about power. And I really, really love that accessory. So I specifically purchased that accessory to use with the Vision Pro, and it is just as good as I thought it was going to be. But now that I actually have it, it's a nice device to own, because as an attorney, for example, one of the things I will do is something called a deposition, which is where you ask people questions under oath, and those will typically occur in like a conference room of somebody's office, or maybe where the person works. And sometimes you're lucky enough to have access to an easy outlet or something like that. But when you have that Anker device with me, I mean, I don't even need to worry about sitting next to somewhere that it's convenient to plug into the wall for power for my devices. I have all the power I need right there in my hand. So I just sit wherever I want to sit at the table, plug into that thing, and I can just go forever. So it's a really useful accessory. And again, I know external batteries have been around for a long time, so there's nothing revolutionary about it. The Anker product just happens to be a really nicely done one. It's got really all the bells and whistles. I love the displays. I love the built-in cords. So it gets just a huge thumbs up for me.
No, it's a brilliant. Yeah, they've made the battery as good as it can be as far as just the smarts in it and all that. Yeah, very cool. And as far as kind of working in the Vision Pro as an attorney, you do a lot of iPad mirroring. I'm curious also, as far as native apps, what's the story there? What do you end up using natively on the headset?
So the biggest problem that I have that I really hope is going to go away any day now is that for me to be productive with my Vision Pro, I need the same thing that I have on my iPad and my iPhone, which is the ability to work seamlessly with my firm's network. The reason I can do it with my iPhone and my iPad is because we use mobile device management, as I'm sure all law firms do in many big companies. The one that we use comes from Microsoft. It's something called Intune. And Intune does not currently support the Vision Pro. Microsoft has said it's coming. In fact, there was a blog post on their Microsoft Intune blog in November 19th of 2024, where they said, we're working on it and it's coming in 2025. And I'd like to tell them, hey guys, it's now 2025. I'm ready for it. So one of these days I will open up the web browser and the news will be that it's finally available and the angels will sing and I'll be thrilled. Because for me, that's important, because it means that I can't access my work email. I can get my work email on the mail app on my iPhone or iPad just fine, but I can't get it on the Vision Pro. My contacts, which are synced through Microsoft Exchange, they're all there on my iPhone and iPad, but they're not there in my Vision Pro. And all, those sorts of things.
Interesting, because I didn't know the full ramifications of MDM. I thought it was more of like remote wiping of devices and all that stuff. I didn't realize it was also your email and stuff like that, which I thought was just
it has that too.
Login,
yeah, but it's the security that's required to give me access to contacts, calendars, and mail, which makes perfect sense because if we were to have an attorney leave our law firm, one of the first things that we want to do is with one switch turn off their access to
Mm-hmm.
the contacts, the emails, and all that sort of stuff at the firm, so that they wouldn't take it with them and potentially use it to the detriment of one of our clients. I mean, not that of course you hope it's an amicable parting, but you know what I mean. I mean, just from a security standpoint, it's a requirement, and so it makes perfect sense that that's a requirement for all of our attorneys to use their mobile devices with our network, is to have that. And if you're using a laptop computer, it's going to be through VPN or something like that. But for Apple devices, which I'm thrilled that we support, I mean, I love the fact that I can still use Apple devices from a mobile standpoint, even though we haven't been a Mac law firm since the early 2000s. So I need that for the Vision Pro. And so once that occurs, it is going to change everything for me. It's going to mean my contacts are there, my email is there. I'll be able to take advantage of things like the fact that Microsoft has had Microsoft Word is like the number one software that I use as an attorney, especially an appellate attorney, because that's basically what I do is I write words for a living and create powerful, hopefully,
And
arguments.
Word is natively in visionOS. That's correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out on day one. Microsoft, Apple got together with Microsoft to make sure it was available. So I can use Microsoft Word natively in the
Mm-hmm.
Vision Pro, but because of difficulties with accessing network resources and everything else,
Yeah, all the
it's so
files,
clumsy to
right? Like
do.
the Dropbox
Yes,
equivalent
exactly.
isn't there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would have to do, I mean, I could do it, but the number of workarounds I would have to do, including, for example, putting something in Dropbox and then using Dropbox, which may not even be a native app. I forget if that's native or if that's iPad, but I could do it. It's just not worth the trouble to do it. And then when I finish my document, I can't email it from the Vision Pro because I don't have my work email. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just so cumbersome. So I
And
feel
there's no
confident.
like doing it through Safari. Is that an option? Is there a web login for all this stuff, or not even that?
Not for us. I mean, I can use Safari to do all sorts of things on my iPad, but again, it's because the MDM software authenticates me on my iPad so that I can get access to things like my firm's intranet and stuff like that.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
it's really as simple as, I mean, I say this as I'm not a programmer, but when Microsoft turns it on, I really think everything else is just going to follow pretty quickly. I realize that since there are so few users, I mean, I'm at a big law firm or medium-sized law firm, depending upon your perspective. We've got about 350 attorneys. I suspect I'm the only Vision Pro user. I've never heard that there's someone else, maybe one of our Florida offices or something. Somebody has one that they just haven't told me yet. But so it's not like there's a huge demand at my firm, but I do very much look forward. So
Now,
that's one big issue. Go ahead.
Now, do you think there's more people trying to get work done on visionOS or tvOS, which they're also working to add support for?
I did see that, and I don't know that anyone is using tvOS as a part of their legal practice. I mean, we certainly airplay to TVs all the time when it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah. I
forensic
wonder,
evidence
yeah, what
securities.
uses that would have. Like, is the file
Yeah.
browser or something on there? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I did see that same reference in the blog post, and I'm like, well,
Yeah,
that's interesting. I guess somebody's out there using it. I'm sure there's
it
somebody that's
is.
just
It
waiting
is
with
such.
bated breath.
Yeah, it's such a shame we don't have that tvOS never expanded out to be like a desktop version of iOS where you could hook up a trackpad and keyboard to it and it become like a little Mac Mini, but for iOS kind of apps. Never became that. I always wished it would.
Totally conceivable that it could be that, and it hasn't done it. So anyway, so that was the first part of my answer to you. But what I do when I'm getting work done with the Vision Pro is I use, one of those two virtual display modes. Either I have, even though I have a desktop Mac, the Mac Mini, with a very nice 27-inch display. No, I mean, nobody can complain about the Apple display. It's a wonderful display. But when I put on my Vision Pro and then turn on that mode that I can see the huge screen, it is. I mean, it's. I mean, anyone that's used it knows that it's really cool when you're using the Mac Virtual Display mode, whether it's the regular mode or that ultra
Mm-hmm.
wide mode that came out at the end of last year. It's really useful. It's useful for the same reason that so many attorneys have and other professionals I know have dual displays, because you can do one thing on one display and one thing on the other
Yeah.
display. I can have my Microsoft Word open on my right, and on my left, I'm looking at the contract or the emails or the evidence or the exhibits, and that's a really useful mode. But it's just as wonderful on the Vision Pro, and in fact, because there's no barrier between one monitor and another monitor, things don't have to be just on the left monitor or just on the right monitor. It can be wherever you want to be, and then the ultra wide mode. So oftentimes when I'm doing work at home on the computer, and I work at night and on the weekends, unfortunately a lot as an attorney. It's always busy. I just love that I can have the one document on the left, the one on the right, and have so much more space than I would have with even the very nice 27-inch monitor that I use. And it's really nice. And I use that all the time. And then the ultra wide mode, which is essentially 3 screens of sides. Sometimes that one's useful depending upon what I'm working at. The ultra wide mode, I personally find to be really cool, but because it's so curved, as it would have to be, because it's so wide, that if I'm actually not actively using all of that space, I put it in the other mode. Because
Wide, the middle mode, right?
The middle mode.
Yeah, that's the best mode, I think, for most
That's
situations.
because that way it's a little bit curved, but it's not very curved, and it's just perfect. But again, if I am going to want to have basically 3 windows of whatever software I'm using, then I do use the ultra wide mode, and I love that it's an option, and I love that it's so easy to switch between them. So you just click the little thing and wait 2 or 3 seconds, and then you're in the new mode. So so I do use that to get work done with my Vision Pro. I can't say that I do it every night, but at the same time, many times when I'm doing something and I find myself doing command tabs or control tabs on Windows, switching between windows, I think to myself, you know what? I wouldn't be having to do this command tab so often if I just had a wider display, and I'll go get my Vision Pro and put it on and then get my work done. And then my teenagers will come in and roll their eyes at me because I look silly, and that's fine, but I'm being more productive. So I love it. So that's what I do for working at home. When I'm working on the go, because I'm not really a laptop person right now, I'm using the iPad, and I'm using that mode that I was describing before with a keyboard and with the trackpad, so that technically I'm controlling the iPad screen, which is just being mirrored to the big screen so that things are bigger and easier to get work done, and I can look straight ahead instead of looking down. And I really like it. It's a nice way to get work done. I have, as we talked about a few minutes ago, thought about, if I did have a Mac laptop, it would be even more capable. Or for some reason, if Apple were to add the support to have this virtual display mode to a Windows computer, I don't know if they would ever do that, then maybe I would take my Windows computer with me. So it would be nice, and I realize it could be better. But since we are just in this, first year of the Vision Pro, it's useful as it is, and it definitely helps me to be more productive. So I know that better things are coming in the future, but I mean, I've been an iPhone user since the early days. I mean, I very much remember the days when my iPhone, the reason I did not buy the first generation iPhone was because it did not work with Microsoft Exchange, which my law firm used. I bought the second iPhone, the 3G, which came out in 2008, because it was the first one. Of course, it had the App Store and all these other things, but that was the one that I could use with my email. So I feel like
Exchange was such a big thing back then, yeah.
Huge, and it's still big for my life. I mean, that's for anyone at a law firm. Just about all lawyers use Exchange, certainly all big firm lawyers like me. So I feel like it's deja vu, right? This is the same stuff I went through way back when. I'm now going through it again with the Vision Pro, and much like I remember the days, I can just close my eyes and remember when we didn't have copy and paste or all these other things. I remember when you scrolled a window and you saw the little checkerboard because it couldn't keep up with you.
Yeah.
And so, I
the
laugh
kids
when
these
I think
days,
back
they'll
now.
never
They'll never
about the
know. But
checkerboard
I feel
days,
like we're going through the same thing with the Vision Pro. The Vision Pro is revolutionary. It's amazing. It's awesome. But when I think of what it's going to be like in the future, much like, looking back at how far we've come with the iPhone and the iPad, that's what makes me, really excited for productivity uses.
Yeah, the airplaying of the iPad display is such a cool thing, and works so well, and the audio comes through with that for the ride. Thankfully, the updated Mac Virtual Display now sends the audio as well through the Vision Pro, which is a very nice change. But
the only downside of mirroring is that when I'm just so into using that big screen in front of me, I want to pinch it and touch it, and you can't, because of course that's just it's just a window. I have to go down and touch the iPad screen that I'm not even looking at to have things show up. And you don't have to do a lot of touching when you have a trackpad, but that's the one thing I don't like.
Yeah. And I mean, the Mac laptop or the headless MacBook Air that I have, it's such a more elegant solution because it's all integrated in the headset. You can kick it off from the headset itself. It just works brilliantly. Like it is the better solution for now, as we've said. I'd imagine. Yeah, we'll see if that gets improved even more with the iPad with visionOS 3. I'm not so sure will or not. I'm not sure if that's on their top priority list or not. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. And that M4 MacBook Air is mighty tempting, I'm sure, with the more RAM and better entry level price and all that. So we'll see how that
Yeah, I love my
that goes
iPad.
for you. Yeah.
The MacBook. Hmm.
Spreadsheets are a thing in your world. Is that accurate?
Sometimes I use spreadsheets. I don't do a lot with numbers, and the sophistication of it's pretty low. But as an attorney, you often have to, figure out legal interest or calculate things. And I think spreadsheets is just a good example of something that they're so many of them are so inherently large that it's an example of how having that larger screen is just really useful. So much like when I'm working with Words and Microsoft Word and things like that, having two screens for a spreadsheet, it's just one screen, but having just one big screen that you've got all the screen real estate that you want, it's just a perfect use case, really.
Yeah, it's one of like the few devices that like you could see big cells of everything. Make it as wide
Yeah.
as you need to and all that. Yeah.
And it's the reason that I think that we'll have this future. I don't know, maybe it's a little too science fiction-y, but like I totally can see a future in which I'm sitting here in my office as I am right now, but instead of having these displays in front of me, I will just have that pair of glasses, and the pair of glasses will give me whatever size virtual display that I want. Um, and I won't even have to worry about edges of, bezels and everything else. I really do. I hope that that world is coming, and I realize it may be pretty futuristic, but it wasn't that many years ago that the displays that were on my desk were these huge CRT screens that took up so much space, right? And the idea of having two displays back then, I mean, some people had it, but the idea of having two CRT displays on your desk that were big was just ridiculous. And nowadays we have the luxury of, thin displays, which are so much nicer. And yet, even with that luxury, in my office, the way that I have my two displays set up is I have one of them horizontal and I have the other one vertical. And I'm not using one in a vertical mode because it makes more sense for my work. It works fine. It doesn't matter. The main reason I have it is because when I'm sitting here at my desk, I don't want to have so many displays taking up so much space that it's like I'm working at, NASA space control, that I'm nothing but monitors, and someone walks into my office and I have to sort of like peek over the top and they just see my eyeballs. And so this future that I imagine that the Vision Pro might get us to one day, where I'm just sitting at a desk that's just, got nothing on it. And, people want to come in my office. It's totally inviting. No one has to see from the back of a monitor or anything like that. When I want the monitor, I just turn that mode on my glasses, and I can see a monitor as big as I want to see it, to see all my documents and spreadsheets and everything else, and then turn it off when I don't need it. That I would love that world. And will we get to that point before I retire? Who knows? But I'd love it if we did.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'll probably always need some kind of monitor at my desk just because of the flexibility of. I like to play video games as well, and HDMI inputs, and I've got like a GameCube at the desk, and that's hooked up through this adapter thing, and like just the input of different video sources is something I'm not sure if Apple will ever care about or address. Like, it'd be so cool if on the battery pack, if there could be some attachment to have like just video inputs of different sources, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
I don't know. We'll see.
But yeah, I mean, it would be so cool if like the battery pack we've talked about before on this podcast, it's got a USB-C port. I'd love if that could pass data. Just hook this up to a Thunderbolt hub, and then you have video input from different sources through that. That'd be so neat.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if they'll address that ever, if they care about that. So for you, is video conferencing part of your job? Is that something you've done in the Vision Pro?
It's a huge part of my job. It wasn't really a thing for many people that were in the same situation as me before the pandemic. I mean, every once in a while I did it, and then once the pandemic came around, suddenly I am going to court using Zoom or Teams or one of those technologies, WebEx, and it was really fantastic as an attorney. I mean, I love the fact that I might be practicing law down here in New Orleans, and if I have a hearing up in Shreveport, which is the other side of Louisiana, and an aggravating, boring drive to go all the way up there, I mean, I love that I could attend, and I actually did attend hearings. You press one button, and I'm talking to the judge in Shreveport, and you turn off, and it's done. So. And likewise, at my firm, even for informal communications, the number of times that we all get together in a conference room has really diminished substantially, because at my firm, for example, we've got offices all over the Southeast. We probably have 18 different offices, and everybody can be sort of on par no matter where you're located, because we all just have our little Brady Bunch square that we sit in. So video conferencing is a big part of my practice. The Vision Pro I love because of what it can have for the future. I think that the spatial persona technology, it has been fascinating to see how much that has improved over the last year, because I find now it's really good. I'm sure that you would agree. And when you're having a conversation with someone else that is on a Vision Pro, which again doesn't happen very often in my legal practice because so few people have it, but sometimes I'll be talking to other people that have Vision Pros, and once you figure that out, it's like, well, let's do our video conference that way. It's just, I love it, because for what I find is within a few minutes of the conversation starting, yes, it's an avatar, but you just sort of forget about that because of the way that it shows facial expressions and hands and everything else, even without the body, even without the legs. It's just like you're talking to another person. And I love, especially if you get into one with multiple people. And I've only done one with up to 3 people before, but I think it can go up to 5. I've never had that many Vision Pro friends. Reach out to me if you want to become a friend. But no. But it's really fun because like it's just you're sitting around and you're just talking, and you really just sort of forget the fact that you're not in the same room, even if geographically one person's in California and I'm in New Orleans and someone else is in the Midwest. We're all just sort of talking and seeing each other, and it's not just the video, it's the audio too, that it tricks your brain into thinking that one person's on the left. And the mode that Apple supports with the spatial persona and FaceTime, where you can then share a display, it's just so nice. I mean, for example, I mentioned that last week I was up in Chicago for this ABA tech show, and I was doing a presentation with a professor at the University of Oklahoma Law School. And when we were doing our planning sessions, we both have Vision Pros, and so we just threw it on, and you could just put up a screen of what we're working on and outlines, and we could look at the screen and look at each other, and it really is like being in the same, it's just about like being in the same room.
Yeah.
And it's so much better than an audio conference call. But even the video conference call that I know so well, because I've been doing so many of them with Teams and Zoom and everything else, there's just something very different about feeling like they're a presence in your room, and the two of you can turn and see a display and share screens. It really, really is cool. I'm not using the Vision Pro for my day-to-day video conferences, because I think that the persona would just look a little too odd for everybody else that's just regular on video. I've done it once or twice just to sort of a lark. We have a technology committee at our firm, and I've done it there before just because it's sort of, haha, look at Jeff. But
yeah,
that's
the only way
what
that
I
works,
haven't
I
done.
think, for day jobs is if you're like one of 50 people joining a Zoom call, where you're probably
then nobody would notice.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it is, but even for those though, because I have done it, some of it, it is pretty cool. Just like any window really big, and the Vision Pro is cool. It's really nice when you have a big Zoom window, and it's easier to see people. And
the
so
Zoom app
I
is
do
good
like it
in Vision Pro. So you've used the Zoom
Yeah,
app?
I've had no trouble. I've the few times that I've used it, it's maybe a half dozen times I've used it total, but it's always worked well for me. But again, the real thing I do in video conferencing is when I have those rare opportunities to talk with someone else in a Vision Pro, and that's when I'm like, this is totally living in the future.
Yeah, no, it's the sense of presence is just unmatched. It's so good. What other notable apps are worth bringing up in this conversation here?
One of the things that I'm interested in is, I think that photos just look so fantastic on the Vision Pro, in part because they're big, and that makes such a huge difference. In part because panoramas, I have been taking panoramic photos for a long time. I mean, I remember, back in 2005, 2006, after Hurricane Katrina, I was living in New York City for a while. And I remember once I was at the old Yankee Stadium, and the way I took panoramic photos back then is I would just use my SLR camera and go snap, snap, snap as I'm sort of going around. And then I would stitch them together in Photoshop afterwards. And those were interesting just for the purpose of getting a vista. But because, as you know, when you look at those photos in a computer, because they're so long, they're not very tall, it almost loses something. And so, but I've been doing it anyway over the years. And so when I first got the Vision Pro and I started to experience what it's like to stand in the middle of a panorama where you could look all the way around you, it's like, oh my goodness, this is why I've been taking these pictures for so long, because they look amazing. And I know it's not video or anything like that, but it's just so realistic, and it's so amazing, and it just gives you so I wish I could go back in time and tell the Jeff of 20, 30 years ago, take more of these things, because one day you're going to be loving it. But anyway,
yeah,
so
I wish I took a boatload more, because I just didn't over the years, and it's kind of sad. Yeah.
I'm thrilled that I took what I did, and it's nice that the regular pictures that I took way back when, because of the technology in the Vision Pro and the Apple, that you can turn it into a fake 3D photo, which is actually usually pretty good. It's nice that I can sort of give some new life to old photos that way, but I do wish I could go back in time. So because I'm such a big fan of photos and stuff, I have been exploring a lot of the photo related apps for the Vision Pro, and there's some good ones out there. I mean, one that I like that I have is called the Sceno app, SCENO, which is neat because it will take your metadata in your photo of where it was taken, and it will sort of place it in sort of like a Google Earth environment. And so you can be like, I can go to Paris and I can use those Google Maps images as if you're walking around Paris. But when I'm looking towards the Eiffel Tower, which is the same place that I took a picture of the Eiffel Tower when I was there years and years ago, it will show my picture right there. And that's sort of cool because you're seeing it, you're exploring Google Maps in a 3D way, which in itself is cool, but you're also seeing my own personal pictures that have the memories that are associated with them and everything like that. So that's an app that I think is pretty cool for photos. Um, Another app I think is pretty cool for photos is called the Fly app, which is basically the 3D version of Google Earth. And the shtick of the app is that it's as if you were in like a helicopter little thing where you have controls that you go left, right, up, down, stuff like that. That's just whatever makes it sort of like a game or fun. But what's cool about it is, much like Google Earth is a great way to sort of get a sense of a place when you're not there, if you haven't gone there yet, just to sort of get the bird's eye view from above and look around and see things. It's really cool to sort of have it, all around you. I don't know as I'm sitting here if it's 180 or 360. I want to say it's 360. I'm not sure, but either way, it fills the field of view, which is what matters. And it's sort of fun to sort of zoom in and out and look around and see stuff. So that's an app. I forget how much it costs. It might be like $20 or something like that. But
Okay.
it was I thought it was worth it. It was a
Yeah.
cool app. I enjoyed playing with that one. That's a neat one that I really enjoy. Um, Otherwise, the other type of app that I've really been looking at is some of the immersive apps, because I am just such a huge fan of Apple's immersive videos for the reasons that anyone listening to this podcast knows. I mean, they're so incredible and I love them all. In fact, Tim, I'll mention that when I was getting ready for this presentation for the ABA, I was looking for a list of all of Apple's immersive apps, and I couldn't find one online. Like nobody had, like Apple didn't have it. There was no one definitive list, and so I created one on my website. And if anyone wants to check it out, my website is iPhoneJD.com, and if you go to iPhoneJD.com/Apple Immersive, just all one word, I have a post where I have listed every video that Apple has either released or announced. I think there's 25 of them as of the time we're talking about this, and I've got them all categorized by the type of the series and the date that it came out and links to it and stuff like that. And I'm going to continue to update that for my own reference. I I can't wait until we have the day where there's so many of them that it would be ridiculous for me to index them all. But we're very like much like there's no index to everything on Netflix or something like that. But for now, there is so few of them that I can keep track of them, and I do love it. And so as much as I love the Apple immersive videos, of course, what I really want is more content, and I wish Apple would release even more. It's great the ones that they've released so far, but I have been trying out a lot of the third-party immersive apps, and the quality varies, but some of them are very good. And the best one, which of course you know about, is the app, the Prima Immersive app, which is just that teamed up with these folks at the Specialists to have that video of AJ Lee and Blue Summit. I think I have the name
Yeah.
right. I mean, that
Phenomenal.
thing is,
Better than
I mean,
Apple's content in my
that's good.
mind.
I would say as good as Apple, but I think maybe better than Apple. It is really, really good. Yeah, do I remember correctly? You had somebody on your podcast talking
Yeah,
about it,
I
or
interviewed
am I?
them. Yep.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And to hear that, like, what they want to do, I know I heard them on your podcast, but I've also seen some of the stuff that they've been. I think it's more the Specialist people that have been talking about it on like Reddit. But they want to have a world where they release one of these a month, and they think that they can get there at some point. That would be fantastic, and I would totally pay for these things. That first episode, I mean, the quality of it is just beyond. It's so fantastic, and I love that a third party is doing it. And I will also say, I mean, I like music as much as anyone. I live in New Orleans we have tons of great music here. I'm not the biggest bluegrass person, but I do enjoy it. And when I heard this band, just having that feeling of the band being right in front of me doing this concert just for me. I have gone back and I've watched it numerous times since then. I have gone on Apple Music. I have, listened to all their music. When I went to Chicago last week and I was walking through the airport, I didn't feel like listening to a podcast and I turned on one of their albums just to listen to all their songs. So like I have become a fan simply because they appeared in, the spatial video. And so, I mean, on the other extreme, the Metallica concert that Apple released an immersive video, that one's amazing too. But I already knew about Metallica,
I gotta
So I
say,
think
that was the
it
first
would be.
time I've heard any Metallica in my entire life.
Oh, no, that can't be true. Seriously?
Yeah,
Wow.
I've somehow missed
Oh.
out on Metallica. And pretty good
Okay, well,
stuff.
I'm not a
Pretty
heavy
good.
metal person or anything like
Yeah, pretty
that,
good.
but,
Yeah.
I was at least somewhat familiar with their songs and, enough that was amazing to see them live.
It
But
was that
back
was a phenomenal video for sure.
it was incredibly well done, and not just the music, but when you're walking into the stadium in Mexico
Mm-hmm.
City and you see the crowd, I mean, you feel
No,
like
like
you're
the
a member of
black
the
and white
band.
to color switch. That was kind of
Oh,
a
that was
nice touch. Yeah.
so I just thought it was just incredibly well done, and I want to see so many more concerts that are filmed that way. And so, of course, I want Apple to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want third parties to do it too, because they might find I don't want to belittle the band by saying that they're a small band. I'm sure they're very popular within their circles, but they were certainly new to me. And if they can come out with content every month from bands, whether it's bands that I know or just someone that's really good that I might want to learn about it, I'm going to watch it because it's an immersive video and I basically get the front row seat. I mean, any good artist is going to be great when you have the front row seat, and I think it's great publicity for the artist. So I would love to see more of that. So I can't say enough about what the folks behind the Specialists are doing, and then the folks that make the Prima immersive app that is the home to that. But I think in the future they would like to be the home to even more of these things. That's just nothing but potential. It's a shame that we only have one there right now, but I guess we
Yeah,
just had
fall
what the
winter they're
NAB
gonna have their
conference.
next one. They're still working on their pipeline there.
Yeah, I know we just had the NAB conference where they were the new Black Magic cameras were being showed off and stuff like that, and I hope that we get to the point where more and more folks that know about video have access to the technology that they can create these things without having to put it together themselves, like is what I
Yeah, and
understand
DaVinci Resolve
for this
20
video.
finally allows normal people
Hmm.
to edit immersive video, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I will say for folks that love immersive video like I do, there are a couple other ones in the App Store that I do think are worth mentioning. I mean, again, they're not the quality of Apple and they're not the quality of that Prima app that was done by the Specialist, but they're worth looking at. There's one of them that is called Explore POV, which is mostly like walking around trails and nature and stuff like that. And they have a lot of free content that you can try and then lots of things that you can download and buy, and they tend to be sort of serene, looking at nature type things. And I suspect that being outside with great light makes it much easier to get a really good video. But the quality of them is good.
Yeah. Is that the one that's featured heavily in Apple's new spatial gallery app?
No, that's not the
No.
same one as that. That's
Okay.
a different company. In fact, now that you mention it, they should be. I wonder why they don't have little clips that are available in there. Maybe it's because they're immersive, and
Right.
the ones that are
Versus
in
just
the
spatial.
Apple app are
Yeah.
just exactly just
Which those are
spatial.
very good. The outdoor nature ones with the giraffes and
Hmm.
stuff. It's like, oh, this is good stuff. Yeah. Not
Yeah,
sure
no,
what
no,
app
they
that
really
is.
are. There was one that was just released recently that has got like the camels and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
even though
they've
it's not
been doing a
immersive, it looks
good,
good.
like, it seems like every 2 weeks there's a batch of new content. That spatial gallery app, there's a latest batch that just came out like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
um yeah.
I'm not normally a person to use Apple beta releases on my iPhone and on my iPad because I just depend upon that to get work done. And I just don't want the uncertainty of a beta. My Vision Pro, on the other hand, which as far as I'm concerned is basically just a beta that we can all try and use. I don't have a problem installing the beta operating system on that one. So I did install the beta version of the most recent one, the whatever point 4 it was. And so I was watching Apple's spatial gallery app since day one, and it was fun to see content added to it throughout the beta process. And now that it's part of the actual shipping operating system, it'll be fun to continue to see releases. I hope
Yeah,
it
and it's
is
so
as common
helpful
as every week.
that there's a badge. There's a little one icon that shows up
Yep.
when the new content drops. Like, it's been forever since badges on any app icon meant anything to me. Because I just like zoom
Hmm.
them out. It's like, oh, I got more email. I always have more email. What else is new? But yeah, the
Yeah, I'll
badge.
mention what might
Yeah.
be a tip or may have just been a bug that I experienced, which is that just this past week, just a few days ago, I saw the badge that you described. And so I opened up the app and it was showing the same videos and pictures that were there the week before. And then I noticed at the very top, you can switch on tabs to like, I don't have it in front of me, but
Oh,
it's like one's called
favorites
like all and
yeah.
favorite. And I noticed that when I switched to favorites, and I don't have any favorites now, so it's a blank screen, but when I switched to favorites and then switched back, suddenly I could see all the new videos. And you could tell they're new, not only because I recognize them, but also because they have dates on them of when they were added.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very easy for me to say, oh, these were the ones that were just added on April, whatchamacallit. And so that was, that's probably a bug as opposed to a real tip. But I did notice that if you do open that app and you're not seeing the new ones, even though you saw a badge, tap on favorites, tap back, and then hopefully you'll see them. That certainly worked for me. So that's one of the apps I thought was interesting. Another one that I thought was interesting is a company this was around early on in the Vision Pro called Amaze with their VR concerts. And I don't know if they're still updating this. And the artists that they featured weren't necessarily my cup of tea, but they were pretty good. And they were interesting because they were spatial. These are it's like a music video. Again, you're very close to the artists, but it's a heavy use of green screens and stuff like that. So it makes it seem, certainly not realistic like the one we were just talking about with AJ Lee and Blue Summit. But it's interesting to be so close to an artist. And again, if you're a fan of one of these bands, and they're well-known people, Zara Larsson, T-Pain, and stuff like that, it's nice that you can get up close and personal with them in these apps. And so I would love to see. I mean, music is just such a great use of the Vision Pro, because we all know that, for a concert, to say that you got that front row ticket is just so nice because you're so close to the artist. And so to be able to experience that, I was happy to pay $3 to see AJ Lee, but if it was an artist that I really loved and it was $100 for a video that I could keep the rest of my life, I mean, I would certainly pay that. People pay that much to go to concerts and stuff like that. So anyway, so I like the idea of what Amaze VR did. Again, they have not had new content in a while, and I don't know what the current status of the company is. A couple other apps that I have found that were worth mentioning. There is an app called Spatial Film, sort of a generic sounding name, but they do have some videos that are spatial and that are pretty good quality. There's another app with a generic sounding name called Immersive Video, and the interface of the app is incredibly simplistic. It's like I feel like I could have made this interface, and I'm not a designer, but the actual content that they have, again, it's not the same quality as the Apple visual stuff, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Another one that's been sort of fun that I've played with, there's two apps that have names so similar, you may think they come from the same company, but I think that they're completely independent. One is called Immersive India, and one is called Immersive China. And it's the same idea. It's people that use these 3D cameras to take pretty high quality videos of different things going on in India, different cities, and different in China. And they are quite good. I mean, they really are pretty good quality. Not quite Apple Immersive, but they're not that far off. And this is not like just a YouTube video or something. So, this stuff is coming, and I'm glad that there are people that have been experimenting over the last 12 months, even though the equipment to do it has been so limited. I'm really hoping that with the Blackmagic camera and stuff like this in the future, as more content becomes easier to make, that those of us that really enjoy the video will be able to enjoy more of it. But what I'm particularly interested in as an attorney, and I enjoy immersive video because it's fun to watch, just like everyone else. But I think about it all the time because, as an attorney, my job is to represent my client. And as a litigator, I'm not like a person that drafts contracts or something. As a litigator, often at the end of the day, I am trying to convince either a judge or a jury or an appeal, a panel of judges. And so, the art of being persuasive is something that I'm always thinking about. And one big part of that is just using your words, whether you're speaking in an oral argument or whether you're presenting a written brief. But for many years now, attorneys have realized that, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so if you have just a big demonstrative blow up, on foam board that you show the jury, they can have more of a sense of, the part of the machine that broke, or the site where the incident happened, or whatever it is. And so a picture can just be so powerful. And then, of course, a video can be even more powerful than a picture under the right circumstances if it's done. And so attorneys will often spend the money to hire people that put together videos, because you don't want something that looks like it was amateurish if you're trying to convince the jury, right? You want something that looks very professional because the jury expects it. People call that the CSI effect. Everyone just assumes that everything's going to be as perfect as it is when you watch the CSI show on TV. And then the next stage that has come along and I've seen it as computers have gotten more powerful, is when you sort of recreate things using video demonstrations, where you'll often have to have like an expert witness who can authenticate that this is accurately showing it. And it's typically done not in a photorealistic way, but instead with more like objects or cartoony or something. But, a perfect example of it is, the car accident where, one person is trying to convince the jury that their driver did not have a chance to avoid the accident, and the other person is trying to say that they could have avoided it. So no matter what side that you're on, you want to show that to the jury. And if you can reconstruct the accident, words are one thing, but to actually have the jury see it with something that looks like just a cartoony version of a car going down, a representation of the road, it's just a lot more powerful, and it can be persuasive. And in fact, it can be so powerful that sometimes judges will limit or even exclude this stuff coming into evidence because they don't want to prejudice the jury by the jury just assuming that the reconstructed version was the truth, when in reality, there's a lot of he said, she said over what the truth was. And so this is something that that attorneys litigate for judges of, is it fair for this video version of the accident to come in? If both sides have their own version, well, that sort of puts everybody on even playing ground. But if one side has one version and one side has the other, then maybe not. So we've seen this over time. And, even with videos, we've seen over time how, when I was a little kid watching Saturday morning cartoons, I was just watching a tiny little screen with the 4:3 display and the rabbit ears behind it. And we've seen that technology advance over the years from, 480i to HD to now we have these beautiful, HDR 4K displays where everything just looks so much more realistic. And attorneys are taking advantage of those and certainly using it when they can. And so as I look to the future with spatial video, I think that there is going to be a future where we will be able to have the judge or the jury put on something like an Apple Vision Pro. Hopefully, they'll be smaller in the future, and they will be able to really understand things, as if they were there, and thinking about that. And it's right now it is mostly theoretical, but there have been there's one example that I know of a court in Florida where somebody had a defense. It was a person that owned I think it was a wedding venue or something like that, and he was arguing that one of the defenses at trial, this was I think in Broward County, Florida, was that the people that were at the party were sort of coming up around me, and I felt like I had to defend myself. It's a self-defense defense. Everybody can understand that. And so what the attorney did was to try to convince people that his client felt threatened. He had a computer animation created that sort of showed where his client was and people coming up around him. But to make it realistic, he was using, it wasn't the Vision Pro at the time, it was the Quest from Meta, but he had the judge and witnesses, et cetera, actually putting it on. And so when you would feel this 360 perspective of your ability to look around and see what the person would see and feel the people coming into you. And although I haven't seen it in person, just from the video that I've seen in the descriptions of it, I imagine it was much more realistic. And if you're the person that's trying to convince the jury that this person really felt threatened, and so self-defense was a viable defense for him to have, this is a way that they could feel like they were there. Again, there's issues as to whether it's too prejudicial because it's too realistic. And in this particular case, it was not used with the jury. It was used for a hearing with the judge beforehand. And I haven't seen if that case actually ever has gone to trial yet or what the status of it is. But it was the first use of it. And once somebody does it the first time, someone else is going to do it the second time. And so I believe we are going to have a future where attorneys that hire a videographer, which we do right now anyway, they're going to hire a videographer that uses something like the Blackmagic, what is it, the Unicine, whatever the thing's called, and they're going to create a realistic 3D movie, and then the jurors will be given 12 of the hopefully much smaller and cheaper glasses to use for this portion of the testimony. You're not going to use it in the run-of-the-mill case, but in a case that's worth millions of dollars, are you going to rent a dozen Vision Pros for a day? Sure, and put them on. And then the jury is going to have a memory. I mean, I know the things, I have never done walking on a high wire between two mountains, but because I saw that video when the Apple Vision Pro came out a year ago of what was her name, Faith something or other, I feel like a part of me knows what it's like to be in that situation because it's just so realistic in a way that a regular 2D video would not be the same way. And so I just think that attorneys are going to really find a lot of value in this technology. And who knows in the future if it's going to be an Apple product they're using, or a Meta Facebook product, or some third party, Android's got their thing. But I really think that there's something special in this technology that we're going to see in the law in the future. And people are going to be arguing as to why judges should allow it. And people are going to be, I talk about the prejudice, people are going to be arguing it's prejudicial to not let the jury see it, because otherwise the jury would not fully understand what the day of the life of this person was, or what this person saw, or what the accident scene looked like, or what it is. And so it's coming. It's in the future.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm so curious about how that will play out, because VR and these headsets, the sense of presence is immense in there, and it's just a matter of like, are they conveying the truth in that thing that they're conveying in the sense of presence? Because it'd be very easy to trick somebody if that's not a truthful portrayal. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're dealing with this issue in regular life too, not in the VR sense, but we're already at the point where AI can create photographs that are totally fake, but very realistic looking. I mean, they just ChatGPT just upped its game on its visual quality recently, and this is something that attorneys are grappling with in court. Of how do you really authenticate evidence when it's so easy for anyone in their bedroom to create something that looks totally realistic?
Yeah,
totally
audio, like there's
audio too.
You hear like in the Fugitive movie, Harrison Ford, here's the 911 call that was placed to, how do you verify that's not just like an AI recording of him saying something he didn't say?
Yeah, it's a big picture. It's a big issue that judges are grappling with. There's a judge where I practice here in Louisiana, Scott Schlegel, who used to be a trial court judge, and now he's appellate court judge. And he was speaking at that ABA conference I was just at, and he speaks regularly on tech issues. And he's written a lot on this subject, that it's tough for judges to understand it. The problem that a lot of judges face is that they're not as sophisticated with the technology, and so either the litigants need to be, the attorneys need to be smart enough to be able to find fakes, evidence, and present it, and it's an issue. It's definitely an issue that's going to be a big part of the legal process going forward, because it's so easy to recreate things that are not real, but boy, do they look real.
Yeah, a job I foresee being a very needed job is verification of truth. Is this AI created or not? And I'm sure that could be a whole job that someone specializes in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. I mean, we've for decades now, we've had experts in the legal field on things like signatures and fingerprints and stuff like that, for the same reason, because you want to make sure that it's accurate and precise.
Yeah. Anything as far as when you're mirroring your iPad to the Vision Pro, what are the best kind of scenarios for that for you? Like, is it just the standard work stuff with email and calendars that you were talking about earlier, and just what are the best uses of that mirroring for you? What kind of apps are you using there?
Yeah, it's really the same types of apps that I'm using in my regular law practice, which for me is, writing documents and editing documents in Microsoft Word, looking at using like a PDF program to look at exhibits. So much of lawyers nowadays, everything is in the PDF format. It's all digital. We file most of our court briefs by putting them in PDF format now, which is a great change that I've seen over the last 2 decades of law. And but the big advantage for the Vision Pro is just to be able to have things around me where I want them. I mean, you don't want to be crazy and have a bajillion windows, but it is nice to have like that big display from my Mac, for example, which is the big monitor. But then in addition, I could put something else up over here and something else over here, and you can just sort of get your work done. And it's not unlike the old days of sitting at a desk and just having a bunch of piece of paper around you as you're working, because you're going from the contract to the document to the correspondence to the whatever. But it's nice to sort of have everything there. Perhaps it looks a little chaotic to someone who's not doing the work like I am, but for the person doing the work, it's nice to have everything there. And I also sort of like that, especially if I'm out and about. And I mean, I'm not often a person who will go to like a coffee shop to work, but sometimes I do. And if I'm there, I just, with the Vision Pro and my iPad, everything I need is there, as big as I need it, all around me, and I can sort of find myself a little corner and get the work done. And it's really, really nice. It really is.
Well, anything we didn't cover that you'd like to before we wrap it up?
I think that's about it. I mean, I will say that I love my Vision Pro, and I'm so happy that Apple came out with this thing, even though it was way too expensive to to really justify that anyone purchased it and everything else. But it's just it's such a it's a great productivity tool today, but it's got so much promise for the future for the reasons I discussed of things that are going to come out. And so I know in future years it's going to be so much better. For entertainment, and I'm not really even using it for games. I've tried some of the games on it, and I hear you talk about it sometimes. But just for like watching movies and videos, whether it's a 3D movie or even just a big 2D, show that I'm watching on Netflix or something, is just I have a beautiful television at my house that we purchased a few years ago, one of those big LG 4K HDR screens, and I still will use it all the time when I'm watching TV with my wife or my teenagers. But if I'm watching something on my own, I'm always going to use the Apple Vision Pro just because it's so much nicer to be immersive, and I love it so much. As like everyone, I wish we had more immersive content, and yet I was realizing when I was in Chicago the other day, and I have a podcast every week called In the News that comes out on Fridays that I do with my friend Brett Burney, who lives in Ohio, and we sort of talk about the Apple news of the week a little bit from a legal perspective, but it's more of a general podcast as well. But he had never actually tried a Vision Pro yet, and so when we were in Chicago together at the same hotel, I'm like, come up to my room, you got to sit here and try it on. And I realized as he sat there that although for me, I feel like there's not enough immersive video content, when I sat down with him of like what you should go through, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so like, where do we start? And there's no way you could watch it all. And so he's watching just a few minutes of this and a few minutes of that. So I can only imagine if you're a new person getting a Vision Pro today, there it may seem, at least at first, like there's a ton of content, much like we saw Apple TV Plus start with its 4 shows that was so pitiful. And now it's got not just a ton of shows, but some of the very best shows on TV. So I hope that Apple keeps at it and keeps giving us great immersive content and makes it easy for developers to do the same, because the immersive video is just so fantastic on the Vision Pro. I just want more of it. I just want to enjoy even more of it. So that's my
Yeah.
hope for the future.
And I'm very excited for Avatar 3 coming out in December and putting that in Vision Pro in 2026 at some point. James Cameron
awesome.
was recently on a podcast and was just praising this format of headsets and how it just changes the game for all this.
I'll say something about that, Tim. And I can't remember. Do you have the what size Vision Pro do you have? Do you have 256, 512? What do you have?
I have the terabyte model.
You have the terabytes. So you got tons of space.
Well, it's all taken up at this point.
Oh, well, see, this is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So when I purchased mine, I pre-ordered it to be there for day one because I didn't know. Just to go back in time, when I bought my first iPhone 3G, I pre-ordered it and I lined up at it was an AT&T store to get it or whatever. And actually, I didn't pre-order it. They didn't have pre-orders back then. I lined up early in the morning to get it. And by the time I walked in the store, they were gone because each store had like 2 of them or something like that. And even though I was like number 4 or 5 in line sitting outside of an AT&T store, because we didn't have an Apple store in New Orleans at the time, I don't think, but I didn't get one. And so I was afraid the same would be true as the Vision Pro. So I pre-ordered so that I could get there early and make sure I got one on day one, because I want to be able to talk about it on my podcast on the first day and show it on our YouTube video. And of course, there was plenty of them. But when I was in the store and I'd already purchased it and I spent so much money on it, and it was the 256 model. And I sat there and I said, you know what, Mr. Apple salesperson, do you have a 512 in stock?
Yes.
And they're like, oh, of course we do. They were happy to charge another $200 on my credit card or whatever it was. And I got the 512 version. And now, a year later, I'm actually happy that I have that, because I don't have it full like you do, but I do have more than 256 on it.
Yeah.
And although I could remove some of it if I needed to, I like just having stuff there. And the perfect example of all that, which is what triggered it when you said it, is Avatar.
Yeah.
Because the Avatar movie, which of course was really made for the Vision Pro more than any other 3D movie, I have that downloaded from Disney Plus, and I think 25 gigabytes or something like that. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's a lot of space. And yet, even though I'm not the sort of person that goes back and watches old movies terribly often, I have gone back to seeing that one. In fact, I literally just did it 2 weeks ago. I just picked a random scene because it's just such a beautiful 3D movie. And I know that James Cameron wanted it to be a fantastic 3D movie. That was very important to him. And this is coming from someone I hated 3D movies in the old days because those glasses that you wear in the theater, they make everything look like it's darker. It's like you're wearing shades. And I got to the point that I would ignore the 3D version of a movie in a theater. And even though my prior TV could support, or maybe it was my Blu-ray player, whichever one it was, I guess they both did it. You could support glasses and watching 3D movies on my TV. I never did it because it just wasn't as good. But now, for the first time, much like I wish I could go back in time and have all these panoramic photos, I wish there was so much more 3D movies out there, especially really good ones like Avatar, because they are just so fantastic. Let me throw out one recommendation, by the way, of the other extreme from Avatar in being such an amazing movie. There is an old Alfred Hitchcock movie that you can buy from Apple called Dial M for Murder. Have you seen it?
I have. It's
Yes.
all in 3D. Amazing.
It wasn't that expensive. It was maybe $3 or something like that to purchase it. It's a black and white movie that is in 3D. And at the time, I've read a lot has been said about this movie. It's actually supposed to be one of the best suspense movies of all times. I think it's on AFI's top 20 list or something like that. But at the time, people thought that 3D was going to be a big thing in movie theaters, and it turned out that it actually wasn't. And so not a lot of people actually saw this movie in 3D when it came out, 50 plus years ago. And it's only been released a few times since then in theaters in 3D. So even though it was made in 3D, not a lot of people have seen it in 3D, but you can now purchase it on the Vision Pro and watch it in 3D. And it's the movie itself, it's almost all of it takes place in a single bedroom. So it's almost like a stage play. And but even though it's black and white, because it's 3D, it definitely has a feeling of depth and presence that you don't have otherwise. And of course, it's a square movie as opposed to a big long movie. But I would recommend Vision Pro owners, if you haven't purchased it yet, spend a few bucks on it. Get this classic Alfred Hitchcock movie. It looks really well. They've done a very nice job with the restoration. It looks good. The 3D is nice. It's Alfred Hitchcock, so of course there's going to be mysteries. And some movies from days of old don't hold up as much nowadays. But I actually thought that this one did pretty well. And it also reminds me that as much as we were talking about music being something that's just so perfect for immersive video, theater would as well. I mean, if you're going to have something huge like Hamilton or something like that, and Disney did a nice job with the Hamilton movie that they came out with a few years ago. But if you could have all of your fantastic Broadway actors do one performance, maybe with nobody in the audience or something like that, or just people that are friends, but actually have the cameras up there on stage so that you're close to the actors or in the first row or a couple different places, because that is just made for Vision Pro. It's the far away stuff that doesn't look as interesting in 3D, but things that are close by, they are just so incredible. And much like having an artist perform directly to you is amazing, having this play performed right in front of you where you could see the actors and almost be a part of it, I think that would be great. And I'm not currently aware of any that are available for purchase. Maybe they are out there, but this Alfred Hitchcock Dial M for Murder movie, it's akin to it because it really just takes place in one view. So I recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen
No,
it
the
yet.
closest thing, I think there's some comedy stand-ups that have
That's right. I've seen that. Yeah.
or immersive, which is pretty good.
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz is also in 3D, so you can watch Wicked in 3D as well as the Wizard of Oz, the original. I think the Creature from the Black Lagoon's another old. There's a number of like old ones that were done in 3D, which is pretty neat.
Although the Wizard of Oz, somebody must have turned that into 3D. That wasn't originally made to be in 3D like
I'm
Dial M
not
for Murder
sure.
was.
I would have to.
Yeah,
look
I'm
that
guessing.
up,
Yeah.
And then the bit rate overall, the Apple does provide higher bit rates to the Vision Pro. Like I downloaded the Deer Hunter, which is a 3-hour movie from 1978, and it was like 20 or I think closer to 30 gigabytes because it's 4K and all that and HDR, and so like they're giving you is depending on the movie. Some have higher bit rates than other, but like storage is very helpful for downloading stuff in that thing.
And that's a good tip too, Tim. If people, I mean, it's so easy to just click a button and watch something, but if you can have just a little bit of patience and download content on the Vision Pro before you watch it, which Apple lets you do in the Apple TV app and the other apps do as well, I actually find that the quality, I mean, first of all, you don't have the uncertainty of, buffering with your streaming, even though I've got very high speed internet at my house. Sometimes hiccups happen. So if you have the patience to download it, it's actually a better experience. I noticed that especially on the video that we're talking about with the Primo app and the Specialist AJ Lee in them, that when I first watched it, I heard that the audio sort of clipped a little bit in places. And then I had actually seen someone on Reddit say, oh, no, download this. You really want to download it. And so I downloaded that one. I downloaded the Metallica one, and just to get that perfect experience as you're watching it. And those are the things that on my iPad, the biggest things that take up space are not my legal briefs. Those are relatively small PDF files. Some of my exhibits take up more space, but it's video. Video things take up space, whether it's law related or just a personal home video of my kids doing silly stuff when they were young and cute. That's the stuff that takes up space. And so in the Vision Pro, where video is so nice, that's the reason to get more space. I'm still curious how you are getting close to 1 terabyte, because that seems like a lot to me. But again, I'm so happy I made the decision.
3D Blu-rays that are stored locally on the headset will do that really quickly.
That would do that. That would do that, yes.
So those get big. And I want to have Prometheus in 3D available at all times, of course.
You just got to have it.
You do, yeah. Also, I've noticed, like, iMessage, it's like 90 gigabytes or something stupid. Like, I don't know how to slim out iMessage without deleting stuff. I don't want to delete stuff. Apple needs a better option for, like, I don't want to delete anything from the cloud, but I also don't want to store everything locally. Like, they need a middle option.
Right now, messages on my Vision Pro just bothers me, Tim. And the reason for that is the thing I started about at the beginning of the podcast. Because I don't have Microsoft Exchange support through MDM, through Intune, it means that every time I get a text message in the Messages app, and the Messages app is otherwise a very nice app on the Vision Pro, but I just see the phone number. I don't see the person's name.
Oh, the contacts,
my contacts aren't there. And I'm like, oh, this is just a pain. Oh. And so one day,
helping you learn the phone number. So if you ever get stranded, you can call them up because you'll know the phone numbers.
It's good for me, I suppose.
The good old days,
perhaps.
Yeah.
So
Man,
like an attorney arguing that something that sounds like a negative is actually a positive.
We used to have to memorize phone numbers. Can you believe that?
That is true. That is true.
Well, where can folks follow your work online?
So you can find me at iPhoneJD.com, where I write about all sorts of things that you can do, especially if you're an attorney. But if you use your iPhone or your iPad to get work done, take a look at it. I think you'll enjoy it. And then I also have the podcast that I record every week with Brett Burney, which is just so much fun, called In the News Podcast. It's inthenewspodcast.com. It's also on YouTube as well, YouTube/ I think it's In the News Show or something like that. But you can find us, and we are either talking, or if you want to watch us, you can watch us too on YouTube, talking about the news of the week that in the world of Apple and Apple technologies, especially iPhones and iPads and stuff like that. I started the podcast a few years ago because my buddy Brett said, hey, Jeff, we should do this. And I totally love it. I look forward to it every week. I'm sure you do as well. It's really a highlight of my week and so much fun. So I'd love to have people join us there.
Nice. Thank you so much for your time today. It was great chatting, catching up.
Good talking to you again. Talk to you soon. Take care. And thanks for all the work you're doing with this podcast. It's fantastic.
Well, that's been an interview with Jeff. My thanks to Jeff for his time recording this episode. My thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. As a reminder, you can support this podcast over at visionpros.fm/Patreon. My great thanks to everyone that supports the show. With that, I'll talk with everyone again real soon.